Live though. Why is Red so sus?
Red is always sus.
So welcome back, everyone. Another episode of True Crime Drunks.
Yes.
If you guys aren't familiar with who we are already, you need to fucking do better.
Yes. This is too many times.
Just too many times I have to keep telling you that I'm Wes and this is Holly.
McBee.
You should already fucking know. But I thought it was funny. So from our last episode, right, with Ed Kemper, we realized how great acronyms are.
Yes.
Because we got, the big frightening giant who,
yeah.
he grabs some heads and does some things.
Yeah.
But our topic of today is also famous for an abbreviated name, which is BTK.
Yes.
And this one is pretty crazy. So his real name is Dennis Rader. Rader. And he's arrogant, very arrogant serial killer.
Yes, the most arrogant. The arrogance that got him caught.
Yeah, the arrogance that got him caught. I don't know. I kind of, it seems like every single time we start studying, watch videos, research, I'm like, this is the one where I'm like, Jesus Christ, this dude's fucked up.
Yeah.
And like, I really think this might be the one where I'm like, this guy's fucked up.
This one's hard. This is rough.
He does some things that were, I mean, okay, to be honest, Ed Kemper, what he did to the bodies is probably the worst thing that we've covered so far. At least dead body wise.
Yeah.
I would still say that the killer clown is probably like universally the worst.
Yeah.
Just because of the number and the magnitude and the age.
Yeah, his victims people.
Yeah, his victims were probably the worst.
Yeah.
But good old BTK really kind of takes the best of both of them and rounds it out in this fucked up little Wichita, Kansas town and really cause some havoc.
Really fucks shit up.
Really throws bows.
Or throws rope.
I like that one. It's funny because he likes to bind people.
Get it? So as we know, BTK means bind, torture, kill. But for the PG version, what if we called him, like BLT, bacon, lettuce, tomato? What if we did, for the PG version, bacon, tomato, kale?
The healthy version of the BLT.
The healthy version of the BLT and the healthy version and kind of more what I would choose instead of being bind, tortured, killed.
Yeah, I mean, no one wants to be bound, tortured. Well, those two probably arguable for people, but killing is never going to be good.
No. I want to be choked where I don't know if I'm going to live, but I still want to live.
I still want to come out that one feeling great. And I also don't want to be jerked onto.
No,
well, okay, at least personally, I'm going to give a hard pass on that.
I don't want to be like bind, tortured, and then jerked on, then killed. What if we called them the BTJK? Bind, torture, jerked on, killed.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know, we'll get into a lot of this, but as far as like, it's like a lot of these serial killers we cover are motivated from just fucked up sexual urges, and his is definitely that. Mm-hmm. But he didn't ever, from my research, he never actually did anything to the bodies sexually besides jerking off on them.
Yeah, and I don't even think he jerked on all of them. I think it was just the first one he did that on. So yeah, so his MO is really different because it was sexual, but it wasn't like to the body. Well, I mean, I guess it was to the bodies, but it wasn't like sexual and where he raped the bodies. He just jerked off after the fact. And
I don't know. This is the thing, is I don't want to say all of the details as far as like every single little thing that he did, because it is pretty fucked up. And I personally, with what I wrote up today, I didn't leave in any of the names just because like any of the victims' names, just because like this one's a little harsh. And I don't want people I don't want to bring up, past trauma for families and stuff, but
yeah, especially because there was some children involved, especially at the beginning. So makes sense, definitely, for sure.
But this wasn't just something where he woke up one day as an adult and was like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go
bind, torture, and
yeah,
kill
bind,
people.
torture this whole family and then kill them and jerk off on them. It started from a young age.
Yeah. So, back to the beginning. On March 9th, 1945, Dennis Rader was born to Dorothea and William Rader. He is the oldest of 4 sons. Tons of boys. So he was born in Pittsburgh, raised in Wichita, where he kind of stayed afterwards. Both of his parents were really hardworking, so they kind of left their kids up to their own device. He felt, and actually Rader then later in life will say that he kind of resented his mother for that, and like was very angry at her for being so neglectful and absent. But at the same time, 4 growing teenage boys are a lot to feed.
Yeah,
it's like feeding a football team. But
for real.
So Dennis Rader kind of was an average kid, kind of bullied, but kind of just, kind of a pussy. But he really got into dark fantasies at a very young age. He even knew I think it was when he was like 8 or 9, he started having sexual urges. So he was kind of an early bloomer in that sense of when it comes to sex and sexual urges. But he got really twisted probably around the age 13. He knew his desires were very different than regular boys and girls. But a little bit before that. So he had like those dark fantasies. But I thought really was interesting was... and that's why I kind of was confused as to why he thought his mom was neglectful, because one of the activities him and his mom would do, because his mom was actually really into horror movies. Yeah. So him and his mom actually watched a lot of horror movies together. So he really loved horror movies. But from those horror movies, he really liked the aspect of defenseless, tied-up women. Yeah. And so that's kind of where, though, not horror bringing into those sexual or fantasies, because obviously someone who loves horror like me, I am obviously not dark and twisted sexually because of horror, but that kind of brought him into the realm of possibilities for him was, or what he kind of like says that kind of brought him into it, was the movies kind of brought it into it. So, but
I do think that in the wrong age frame, in the wrong mental state, probably watching horror movies at a too young of an age might actually have a negative impact.
I think it does, and I think, because my mom married, or dated this guy whose son would literally watch the Saw movies, and he was 7.
Yeah, that's not great.
Now, I was 13 at the time, and I literally had to leave the room because I couldn't watch, because I was so, like, it just made me very uncomfortable, but he was watching it like it was fucking Tom and Jerry.
Well, and one thing that maybe is a disconnect from you and I and our friend groups for the most part, because we're all, like, myself and my friend groups are really, well... Myself mostly, but some friends are really big into horror. I know you love horror movies and horror genre.
As
but you kind of... I forget that like a lot of people don't watch horror movies.
Yeah, no, it's not something people like or gravitate towards.
Like it's really... It's mainstream now because horror fans are so into it, right? So like it's hard to avoid horror fans.
Yeah.
But the reality is I don't think the majority of people really watch horror as a whole. No. So like... I sometimes forget that, like, people don't want to get scared.
Yeah, I kind of forget that, too. Or people, I noticed, too, because when I was in the single dating world, is when I would talk about people, like, the Tinder questions, what's your favorite kind of movie? And I'm like, I like horror movies. And then a lot of guys were like, oh, really? And, like, kind of weirded out almost. Like, they just didn't expect me to say horror was my all-time favorite kind of horror movie, and I will always watch a horror movie. At any point in time, like, no issues. It's just one of my favorite things. But, yeah, no, it's, like, it's really weird. A lot of people don't like being scared, which, I don't know. But that is one thing that I read on was apparently people who watch horror movies are actually more comfortable with death. So they can handle death better than people who hate horror movies.
Well, and I'll be straight up with you. I imagine you're probably in the same boat. I'm so desensitized to everything now that, like, it takes something really fucked up for me to be like, okay, that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, no. And most of the time it's, like, fucked up in a sense of, like, a psychological fucked up for me to be like, ooh.
Yeah, but if it's, like gore or whatever, I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Ooh, quick side note, really good show. Nurse Ratched on Netflix. There's some parts in that show that makes me just go, oh God. And that says a lot because I realized like some of the scenes I was just like, that's very, very detailed. Because I feel like some horror movies they're like slash and then like that they move on and I don't really like process it. But like for some reason that show has some scenes in it that I'm just like, Jesus Christ, great show. Nurse Ratched. It's a
Nurse
new.
Ratched?
It's by the same person who does American Horror Story.
Oh.
Some people might hate it. It just feels like another season of American Horror Story, which I love the show, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's really good. So anyways.
Yeah, to get back into it, I think it's interesting that he did talk about how the defenseless women in horror movies was something that triggered his whole entire spiel because, I mean, in 2020 we have, like, the BDSM scene's really popular, the sub-dom scene's really popular, and it just seems like he would have been a person in today's day and age that probably could have got his rocks off being in like a dom sub situation.
Yeah, but I think, and like you were saying earlier, I think if he was born now, I don't know if he would have gone on the path that he did because I mean sexual because he was kind of like also too timid and he didn't really tell anybody about his sexual urges because he knew how
fucked up it is. Because I mean, during that time period, like. I mean, we're talking, what, the 70s and 60s? Like,
oh, yeah.
This was before even, like, porn was common ground. Like, it was still very, like, taboo.
Because if he was born in 45, by the time he was 30, it's going to be 58. So it's 1958. And if you're talking about those kind of sexual fantasies that he had, he would be considered a crazy person. Yeah. But nowadays, it would more be like, get off a Pornhub, kid.
Yeah. Go outside and
try some vanilla sex, and then you can get there.
Go to the gym and lift weights with your left arm for a while. You're looking a little misproportioned.
You're looking a little lopsided.
Because
definitely if he was born in the 90s, now he would probably do really well as a dom. Yeah. Because there's a lot of communities like the tying up communities.
Oh yeah, I mean,
the communities.
And I guess I mean, we don't know, right? Like, he could have still been a fucking murderer.
Oh, yeah, no.
But I with how we are as a society when it comes to sexual vices, it's definitely more like you find like-minded people. And maybe he would have been in one of those weird extremists, like, excuse me, I don't want to say weird. I don't kink shame, unless that's your shame.
Kink shaming is my kink.
He probably would have fallen under one of those extreme versions of this, but I don't think that, well, maybe he wouldn't have fallen into this route of serial killer.
No, but then again, at that young age, he also exhibited, which I didn't know that's what it was called, zoosadism, which is torturing, killing, and hanging small animals. So he was really into the hanging aspect, like hanging, dangling with ropes kind of thing, which is it's one of the BDS communities. Yep. It's a big thing. But yeah, so he also was really into acted out sexual fetishes.
Will you carry this for a second? I'm
gonna go see
what is going on outside.
For sure. But anyways, back to kind of like his childhood. So he would kill, torture, and hang small animals. He was also known to spy on his female neighbors. He liked to dress up in women's clothing. And he would steal women's clothing and masturbate with ropes and bindings around his arms and neck. So he was really into rope and binding, even for himself. It wasn't always just to another person. He liked to have that done to him. Later in his life, you'll obviously... we'll get a little bit more into that, but later in his life, he would actually have moments where his cooling off period, so when he wasn't killing and doing all that stuff, he would actually dress up as a woman, wear like a woman's mask, and bind and torture himself essentially, and get off that way. So he liked the binding to himself as well as not, but... So that was kind of his childhood, but most people didn't know that. He thought everyone in his community thought he was very polite, well-behaved, well-mannered, just a normal average kid, normal guy. After high school, he then joined the Air Force, where he was there for about 4 years. He was actually even a staff sergeant. So he was really, from what everyone knew, he was just a normal guy. He came back and then married his wife, and I think, what was it?
2 kids.
Yeah. Married his wife in 1971, had 2 kids, which his daughter has actually spoken out about. His son doesn't really talk about it, but his daughter is very open about her dad and like how she's like, it was really hard because I lost my dad, and it's really hard. And I actually watched like her wedding video of him just like walking her down the aisle, and it's really creepy. Watching those kind of videos of them doing the most mundane thing, like walking your daughter down the aisle, terrifies me because it's like almost chilling because it's like, what?
Yeah.
You know, like it's just really weird. It just
feels like, because during the time no one knew, but then you look back on it, you're like, that guy is thinking about murdering and torturing people right now, probably.
Yeah, like he's walking his daughter down the aisle and he's like, wonder if I have time to stalk another lady tonight.
Do you want to know what's going on outside?
What's outside?
People driving around with political flags and other flags honking their horns.
Oh my god. We're trying to podcast here. Keep your politics out of the podcast.
Keep the politics out of the podcast. One thing that so as our previous episodes and research goes, I would still put Dennis in the category of a successful guy, like the rest of these people.
Yeah, he even went to college, got I think he got a bachelor's.
You want to know what he got a bachelor's in?
What?
Criminal justice.
Of course he did. Fucking of course he did.
So we're talking now, this is what, the third person? Golden State, Ed Kemper, and now BTK, who have either studied or graduated with some sort of minor or research into criminal justice.
Yeah. Why?
I mean, listen, I'm not going to say that there's any correlation or whatever, but do you think that there's a point in time where someone thinks in their head, like, let's say you're fucked up and you plan in your life to murder somebody?
Yeah.
I mean,
thinking about one right now. I'm just kidding.
I mean, there's a couple. There's 2 career fields that I can think of that you could go into where you might potentially run into a situation where you might have to kill somebody, and criminal justice would be one of them.
Criminal justice, yeah.
So I mean,
it kind of makes sense.
Is that the thought process, or is it the thing where we talked about Golden State, where maybe he knew so much about criminal justice, that's why he was so good at being a ransacker and murderer, and kind of like BTK, he got away with it.
Yeah, that is true. And honestly, BTK could have never gotten caught, except he was horny for the fame.
He wanted to be this infamous Jack the Ripper. He wanted
the claim. He didn't want someone else to have it.
Yeah.
He was too selfish.
And to be fair, I mean, we're sitting here in Utah 30, 40 years later talking about him, so I mean,
it kind of works.
He may have gotten what he wanted.
I mean, he did kind of technically, because I mean, this is what he wanted the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so kind of normal guy. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in his like early adulthood before we get into the murders.
Yeah, there was a couple things. So he was a family man. He was married with 2 kids. He was a member of the Christ Lutheran Church, which is very relevant in a little bit. And he was a Cub Scout leader.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're talking like what Holly said with walking his daughter down the aisle. This guy would go on camping trips, I imagine, and, just teach them and tell them good ghost stories.
I bet he was fucking great at teaching them knots. That's for sure.
He's all like, this is a noose. I mean, oh, no, we didn't do the Windsor knot.
If you want to tie up a lady, if you want to tie up a deer.
Yeah, you got to get the meat hanging real high, right? Like, right around the neck, and you got to beat your dick then. I mean, you got to cut the deer.
But, like, if you're getting aroused, if you're getting excited about the kill, if you're getting excited, fuck.
And this is one of the things that they didn't ever say, and no one came forward. Like, there was no... I know when you think Cub Scout leaders, like, you kind of have, like... It's almost like the old priest jokes, kind of.
Yeah, I always think of a priest.
Yeah, but there was never any stories that came up that he molested any kids, nothing like that. And like you said, community-wise, they loved him. He wasn't like...
He wasn't like Gacy.
He wasn't like Gacy.
He wasn't like the party playboy who everyone wanted to be friends with. But he was just a good gentleman. And I mean, like, I don't think he really... Well, the thing is, I don't think he was attracted to kids or, like, he wasn't really... And also, too, he wasn't really into molesting as much.
No.
So that's why I think he did really well in the Cub Scouts and was also a member... And eventually was the elected president of the church council for the Lutheran Church. So I think, like, his desires were more towards the binding aspect. So I don't think he would have gotten anything off of doing anything to the Cub Scouts because obviously he was, unless he was binding them. But even then, I think, because his MOs were normally single women.
Yeah.
Or just women.
Family or single.
Yeah. It was always just about, it seemed like he had a type, but, like, almost didn't have a type. It was more of, like, it's like love at first sight for him.
Yeah.
It was, like, for some reason, that one person just piqued his interest, and he was like, I will stalk and follow you and know everything about you.
And when we get into the kills, we can talk more about this, but it is strange because he claims that... Because his first victims was a family of 4.
Yeah.
And the way he tells the story is he broke in and wanted her to steal their car or needed their car and something else. It was like car and something. And then like he said that he wasn't wearing a mask so they could identify him. So then he strangled one of them. And he didn't even know if he was dead or not, but he strangled him. So like it was like a weird, either he's lying and it was all premeditated, which I kind of think it was, or it was a situation where it was like, I did this thing, now I have to figure out how to not get caught in the spot. And that was when he jerked off on someone for the first time.
Yeah. Well, and I think the two thing, like him playing it off as like he was trying to rob somebody, he had a wife and kids. He was like, he had everything he would technically need, and he can't really steal a car when you're married, because then if you get caught, your wife knows. So I think maybe it was like, at the time, he was just going in to, like, test it out, and then he got in over his head and had to finish, because with the little boy, he actually put a sock over his head and slowly suffocated him.
Yeah.
So it wasn't fully, I already did one person, gotta finish the rest. It was, like, I think it kind of was maybe he was, like, playing around, trying to see how it goes, but I think in the end, like, the end-all, be-all, it was more of, like, this is okay.
Right.
I want to do this.
And when I say that BTK was... I put him in that category as being a successful person aside from his killings. Like, he had several jobs. He worked for Coleman Company, which is like I think that's more of like a local Home Depot type of store.
Yeah.
He worked at the Wichita, which this is what he's kind of... I don't want to say he's known for this because I don't want to tarnish the company's name.
Yeah.
But he worked for ADT, and that's one thing that always goes hand in hand with BTK is he worked for ADT installing security systems.
Yeah, so he knew how to get around security systems.
Yes, so he knew how to get around security systems, but he also was in a lot of people's houses, and this was right during the time he was killing, and he even talked about how homeowners were concerned about the BTK killings while he was out installing their fucking security systems.
Yeah, he was helping the people to prevent him while they invited him in. And
then he was a dog catcher.
Yeah.
Or a compliance officer or something like that for a city, Park City, Kansas. Mm-hmm. But there was something with being the dog catcher thing. Now, 1991 is well past most of his murders. I believe actually his last murder took place in 1991. But people did say that he was very overzealous and extremely strict, as well as taking special pleasure in bullying and harassing single women. And then one neighbor even complained to the company that ran the dog catching that he killed one of her dogs for no reason. Yeah. So like just a side thing away from all the craziness that we'll talk about now.
Yeah. So this is what the Chicago Tribune has posted. So on January 15, 1974 is when he killed the family with the 2... Also, I just realized everyone in the family all have J names, and that's kind of cute, but also, like, now it's sad because, they're all dead. Yeah. But he killed all of them. The dad, 38, the mom, 34, and then the 2 youngest, 11 and 9.
Right.
And so that was the one where he came into their home, strangled the... I don't remember who he killed first. Or who we thought he strangled first.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he killed one of them first by strangling, and then it turned into all of them getting strangled.
Yeah, it turned all into strangle and binding. And then that was his first time where he jacked off on the crime scene.
Right.
Where he actually left his DNA.
But he did claim that he cleaned everything up, and they never did find any of his DNA.
Did they not? I thought they found... Maybe they didn't. I thought they found it one place, but maybe he didn't. Anyways, doesn't really matter, but that was the only one where we know he jacked off onto one of his victims and cleaned it up.
Right.
Because after that, he just jacked off, like, I don't know, in his, like, hand. I don't know. He didn't really get into specifications because it just sounded like he did jack off at.
Right.
Because he got off, obviously, about the strangling murders and all that jazzy jazz.
And I think it's interesting, too. So, Dennis has talked about this. I don't know if it was in interviews or whatever, but, you know, he acted out his own sexual fetishes, which we kind of covered, all from voyeurism to cross-dressing and asphyxiation. Like, he did all of these things in his private time.
Yeah.
And even to the point where, like, he had stolen, like, women's underwear and was wearing them. And then later in his life, he actually had restraining orders put against him from single women because he was stalking them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this guy wasn't just, like we said before, this wasn't just like a jumping into this. Like, he was in a realm of what we would still even consider more of the extreme level of sexual fetishes.
Yeah, and like there's accounts too where he had like detective magazines that like had in the magazine depictions of crimes, and that's what he basically, that was like his Playboy.
Right.
Was the crimes basically is watching women tied up and like being murdered.
Well, yeah, and then one thing that he did confess to with the whole cross-dressing thing is that he admitted that he was pretending to be his victims as part of a sexual fantasy. He would do whatever he did to the victims, kill them, torture them, strangle them, and then whether or not he took their clothes, who knows, but then he would go home, practice those acts like asphyxiation or whatever while wearing women's clothes, pretending to be
the women. Yeah, which...
That's a lot.
That's a lot. But, yes. So, after that murder, there was then April 4th, 1974. A woman was stabbed to death in her home. That police then concluded was BTK's victim. And then in October 1974, the Wichita Eagle Beacon gets a letter from someone taking responsibility from the first families, including crime scene details. So, not only was this asshole doing all the murders, but he was taunting the police, being like, you don't have the right guy, it's me.
Oh, it goes even deeper than that. Like, he was leaving crime scene care packages all throughout the city. Like, one of them he taped to a stop sign, and it had, like, jewelry from one of his victims in it, and like photos, and like this is the craziest thing about BTK is like he was obviously very arrogant, and he wanted this city to be scared. Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with like if he felt like the city was against him, or why maybe that had some sort of role into him murdering, but like it was pretty frequent. Well, I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, not frequent, but they found tons of letters, and he even went to the extent of hiding almost every single detail of that first murder in an engineering book in a public library.
Yeah.
It was like a confession almost.
Right.
So if someone would have came across that book, they would have found him years before they actually did.
Yeah. And then he even wrote poems. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to pull one up. But yeah, he would leave letters, poems, would write to news places, anything to basically say like, oh, it's me, not this person. But
well, and he also talked about in one of his letters that he sent. He said that he was driven by something that he called Factor X, which he said is a supernatural element that also motivated people like Jack the Ripper, Son of Sam, and Hillside Strangler.
yeah.
So he's comparing himself to these guys because he wants to get that level of fame, but he's also claiming that there's some supernatural element to this this is why he's doing it.
Yeah.
I personally think that he just thought that he was super special, which kind of goes in with one of the psyche valves that I'll talk about later that he went through. Is I think that he really thought, for some reason in his own eyes, he was more special and more important than everyone else, and no one wanted to listen to him, so he decided to go the route of terrorizing people, because when you terrorize, people start listening.
Yeah, and then, well, because when people are more fearful, it makes sense as to, like, why. I don't know, maybe he just got off on the fear as well. But.
So, he tried to murder this lady in 1979, and he did make a big deal about this in one of his interviews or courtrooms where he talked about, and this is a quote, he said he was absolutely livid that he was unable to kill that woman.
Yes, it was, I found the poem. So he wrote her a letter because he came in there, obviously she wasn't there, and he was so mad about it. He wrote her a poem. I'll read just a little bit, and it's called, "Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?"
Yeah.
It was, "'Twas the perfect plan of deviant pleasure, so bold on that spring night. My inner feeling, my inner feeling hot with this fucker. Too extravagant for me. I'm too stupid." But it was just like, oh, Anna.
Very intelligent.
Very intelligent. I'm reading this and I'm like, this could be like in like a fucking like literature class. It's so well written. "Drop of fear, fresh spring rain would roll down from your nakedness to scent to lofty fever which that burns within. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear? Alone, now in another time span, I lay with sweet enrapture garments across mass private thoughts. Bed of spring moist. I'm sorry, the word moist just gets me.
Moist is a good one.
Clean before the sun, enslaved with control. Warm wind scented the air. Sunlight sparkled tears. And eyes so deep and clear. Alone again, I trod in past memories of mirrors and ponder. For number 8 was not. Oh, Anna, why didn't you appear?"
Yeah, that's pretty fucking dark.
Could you imagine getting a letter and someone being like, "Why weren't you there? I was ready to,
Immediately moving across the country.
I would literally leave my residence, change my name. I'd be like, this is it. I'm out.
So I want to talk about the killing of a 53-year-old woman he did in 1985. And particularly, this is the reason why I left out some of the names for the victims. Because there's two things that really bother me in the world.
Yeah.
Like as far as like creeps me out, not like pet peeves or anything, but like there's something just beyond like unexplainable that I just don't know why it pisses me off so much. But that's when someone does anything to a dead body, because it's like like it. The minor thing that's similar to that pisses me off is when people will talk shit behind your back and won't just tell it to you, because it's like, how am I supposed to defend myself
when you're talking shit behind my back?
Yeah, like if you have a problem, just tell me to my face. But like, and it's the same thing with like anytime kids are involved, like with being victims or whatever, they can't defend themselves.
No. And
dead bodies, like that's one thing that just really pushes me over the edge of like, I can't explain it, but anyways, he murdered a 53-year-old woman whose name I'm going to leave to rest in 1985. And if I'm wrong in not naming people, maybe it's more respectful too. Please let me know, because like I'm trying to do the least disrespectful thing possible. I don't know if it's better to name people to try and pay homage, or if it's better just to lay things to rest. I don't know. I don't know what's best.
I think I don't know, that's a little bit hard to say. I feel like saying the victims' names, it depends on the context. If you're using it as like a remembrance, like gone too soon /
Yeah.
you didn't deserve that, what, insert name, I think that's good. But I think in some cases, like, I don't know, like children's names I feel like should be left out. But at the same time, like when I think of like mass shootings, I think we shouldn't bring the killer's name in. We should only talk about the victims.
Yes, I agree.
We should only mention them. But in a situation like this where a name is so prevalent and we know the face and we know the names, I feel like sometimes maybe leaving the victims out is a little bit more a par. Like
the reason why I feel so bad about this one is because what I'm going to tell you that he did really irked me and made me feel uncomfortable. Kind of going back to we talked about like things don't make us uncomfortable. This does, and it did. And like I don't know this lady who this happened to.
Yeah,
and it's so tragic that she got killed and so awful. But then what transpired after her killing is even worse. So it sucks because I wish we had information on who this lady was, because I would do a whole podcast on her just to say like this was a person. Like no one ever talks about the victims as people. They're just victims, which sucks.
Yeah.
I want to know who she was, like what she was about. But that's a whole different tangent. What happened is he killed this lady and he took the body of this woman to the church that he was the president of the council of.
Yeah.
And he photographed the body in various bondage positions, as well as other things, like just basically dragging the body around this church and taking pictures.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that just is so, I don't know. That's a level of, if I believed in a heaven or in hell, you're going to, like, the bottomest hell. Like, that's just so fucked up.
Like, taking the body to places. Well, and then getting pictures for your own sexual gratification. That's the part that's messed up, is that you're taking pictures to use later.
Well, and then, like, he just dumped the body in a ditch.
Yeah.
Like, after he was done. He did call this plan Project Cookie. I couldn't find a reason why he did. But that was all premeditated, obviously. Like, taking the body, like, I don't know. It just, that one was tough for me to research and read through. And I left out details because I just don't want to, it just makes me sad and angry.
Yeah.
And then 88, so a couple years after this, is when he killed 3 more members of a family. So now he's killed several single women and now a total of 7 people in 2 separate families. And one thing that we're not talking about that much, he sent in a lot of stuff to newspapers and police. And it was all like evidence from the crime scenes. It was all letters. It was all different kinds of things just to say, hey, by the way, this was BTK, and I don't want you motherfuckers to forget who I am.
Yeah. Also, he wrote another poem called Oh, Death to Nancy. So, like, this motherfucker was fucking spitting rhymes.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's almost like, because, like, what puts him a little bit different than everyone else was no one wanted to even admit to it. Like, some people would even, like, deny that they ever did it. Like Gacy, he never admitted to doing it.
Yeah.
And, like, so I think is what puts him apart from a lot of people is the way he just wants to, like, I don't know, like, keep bringing it up, like, keep making it.
I'm not a psych major, psychologist, anything like that. But I almost wonder if we go back to the horror genre, right, and his fascination with that. Mm-hmm. I don't know what he watched, but I wonder if he really wanted to be like a Jason.
Like a Jason or something. Well, from what it sounded like, he watched everything. So I wonder if, like, yeah, I could see that. Like, because, you know, like, because, like, in the horror community, everyone knows Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy Krueger. So I wonder if he did have that desire to be the BTK killer. Because didn't he name himself?
Yeah, oh yeah. No, BTK was 100% his name. That was not
it wasn't just something they came up with. He came up with his own name for the BTK killer. He wanted to be a household name almost. He wanted to have that connotation. He wanted to have that fame. He wanted to be named as a person. So I feel like he did want that I don't know, that publicity, I guess.
Right.
Because he really, I mean, he even named himself. He put himself in a situation where he was always found. Oh, I wonder that movie. Sorry, we're looking up horror movies that came out in the 60s, and I see one here that's called 2000 Maniacs, and literally the cover has a woman that's bound.
Right.
Or, like, tied up with rope.
Well, and, like, so in the 60s, I guess maybe Friday the 13th wasn't out yet?
No, those were 80s.
So, if he was watching more 60s horror movies, these are when they were very, like, intimate, like, as far as, like, why they were horror. It wasn't really monsters besides, like, Frankenstein and stuff, or, you know, I'm sure Night of the Living Dead was out, but, like...
Yeah, so there was, like, monsters and stuff, but it was also, too, I
would say Psycho is probably the most popular 60s one. That's straight up just a white guy who murders his mom.
Yeah, well, keeps his mom's body and dresses up as his mom.
He dressed up as women and his victims.
That is true. I'm trying to think. But yeah, that 2000 Maniacs, just the cover alone is making me think. Yeah, that makes sense. Right next, like if you pull back.
Yeah, you can see her bound.
But I think at this time too, it was a lot of the women were much the victims in a lot of horror movies because it makes the most sense because they're the most defenseless and the weakest, I guess, in the sense of just biologically, I guess.
Well, and definitely back in the 60s, the gender roles were very
strict.
That stereotypical, like what we make fun of now, like
Yeah.
Women cook and clean, they're weak. Like, yeah. They don't do anything.
They're easy to get.
Yeah. So, I mean, 60s horror movies were probably all that.
Oh, 100%. It was always, like, the damsel and then the men finding the killer.
Yeah, yeah.
You always had, like, a woman victim then solve the murders.
Yeah.
But, so I think, I don't know, I don't want to say, like, horror made him that way. I think he always kind of had that predisposition. Well, and also, too, so with the whole, like, hanging and killing animals and binding and torturing them kind of started the whole thing. So I feel like he just had a lot of shit going on.
Right. Now I got pretty hyped about how he got caught.
Yes.
Because I'm a nerd.
Yeah. And
whoever figured all this out was definitely some sort of fucking nerd.
Oh yeah, definitely. Which also too, like another like nerdy thing. This is like has to do with like office supplies. Is when they like figured out that he printed some of the letters at the library because they were able to trace like the paper and the ink and like all that stuff. I was like, that's pretty badass.
Right.
But like, obviously it's a public library. How many people are coming in to use their computers and shit like that all the time and printing shit out? Obviously, you can't really contract or like figure out from that. But I thought that was really interesting. Like another interesting thing that like they were able to track down the fucking place that he printed out some of his letters and stuff.
So, and this is the crazy part about BTK, is in 2004 it was a cold case.
Yeah.
They had almost 100% given up on it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, he hadn't killed anyone since 1991.
Yeah.
He has now taken a lull of, how many years is that? 1991 to 2004. It's 14 years. So, like, nothing's happened. No one's died. He hasn't sent in any letters, anything like that.
Yeah.
Until a random month in 2004, Dennis initiated a series of 11 communications to the local media again.
Yes.
Almost in like
hey, don't forget me.
Hey, motherfuckers, I haven't heard my name in like 10 years. I want to get back into this. And a huge blunder, which will actually lead to his arrest in 2005. And keep in mind, this is still pretty fresh. This was only 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we're not talking, Gacy, and this was like in the 70s and 80s. He did not get arrested until 2005.
On fucking his stupidity.
On his stupidity. Well, you know what? He was stupid to do this, but also, like, I wouldn't even known about how he got caught.
Yeah.
But, so anyways, how it went down is pretty insane in my eyes, and it really sounds like something that you would see in, like, a fucking movie.
Yeah, like, it's almost just so unbelievable.
Right. So, the short story to this whole thing he was still being arrogant. He was still sending in letters, talking shit, saying all this wacky, crazy stuff. And you can go read a lot of these. Yeah. I left it out because it's fucked up, dark, and gloomy. I don't want to sit here and read it all, you know?
Yeah.
But he sent in, like, photographs of crime scenes, letters, photocopies of driver's licenses of victims that he had, all this type of stuff. And he placed packages throughout the city. Like I said earlier, one was taped to a stop sign, which had, I don't know who found it, but in it was graphic details of what happened with that first family.
Yeah.
Like, just graphic. So if a fucking family came across that and opened it up and started reading that, that would be devastating.
Oh, yes.
Right. And all of his packages and letters are accounted for online, like I said, if you guys want to talk about that. But you're not going to believe me when I tell you what got him caught.
No, it's fucking insane.
A floppy disk.
I'm sorry, it just is so fucking funny.
A fucking floppy disk. Like, a literally, like, yes, I'm talking about, like, the late 90s, early 2000s floppy disks.
Yes.
For you younger audiences, you probably don't even know what this is, so you're going to have to look it up. I'm almost at that age of retirement now where I know stupid shit like floppy disks. I remember in elementary having to shove a floppy disk in there and it could save like 2 PDF files at most. Like, it was like, I don't even remember how much memory they had, like 144 megabytes maybe.
Oh yeah, like it was like basically a flash drive but in a disc.
Yeah, in a disc, and it didn't hold jack shit. But before we get into the fucking radness that is this guy who basically figured out how it was Dennis Rader, there's a very random important thing that happened that I have to cover. Dennis had tried to place a package of, you know, stuff from murder scenes and letters on a bed of a pickup truck at Home Depot. And he personally never heard anything about it in the media. No one covered it. It didn't hit any news articles. It didn't say, oh, another package from BTK.
No.
And he was like, what the fuck? So he asked about the letter. He sent it to the police station or the news media to be like, hey, so who ended up finding that letter I put at Home Depot? And the police went and watched the surveillance footage. And, well, since he was a surveillance guy and knows how it was, the only thing that you could see on the surveillance camera was someone drop off a package in a black Jeep Cherokee. That might not sound important at all, but it's very important. So in a different letter that Rader had sent, he straight up asked the police department if he put stuff on a floppy disk, if it can be tracked or not.
Yeah.
He's having communications with the police officers,
right,
through newspaper articles and letters.
He's like, hey guys, how can I tell you more about the murders but not get caught?
Right. So, like, this probably sounds crazy to you because this sounds crazy to me. He's like, he would send them a letter and then they would reply in a fucking local newspaper like a goddamn movie.
Yeah. Because they're like, well, we don't know who the return address is. I guess we have to publish it because we don't fucking know how else to communicate with them. So,
in a newspaper article, they said it would be safe to use. Which, in theory, isn't wrong.
Yeah.
Unless there is a fucking high-level IQ guy on your team.
Which, most of the time... Well, and also in this scenario, it's the police department. If they didn't fucking have somebody, they would send it to someone who can.
Yeah. And I really wish I could have found the name of the guy who did this, but it's brilliant. So on February 16th of 2005, Rader sent a floppy disk, a letter, a gold-colored necklace with some sort of medallion on it, and a photocopy of the cover of Rules of Prey, which is a novel about a serial killer.
Yeah.
He sent that all in. Now, once they got the floppy disk, this is where the fun shit started happening. And I know a lot about tech. I don't even know how this works.
Yeah.
But someone got into the floppy disk and found metadata embedded in a deleted Microsoft Word document on the floppy disk.
Hell yeah.
So they basically broke into the code in a way, if you want to put it that way, and found that there was a deleted Microsoft Word document. And this was not planted by Dennis for some arrogant thing.
No.
Obviously. Like,
oh, no. He thought he should have just used a new floppy disk, but no, he just like, I'll delete this one and use this one.
Right. So the metadata contained the words Christ Lutheran Church, and the document was marked as last modified by Dennis. Just Dennis.
Just Dennis. Okay.
And they were like, oh, interesting. So one quick internet search later, if you just type in Dennis and Christ Lutheran Church, ding, 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 come to find out, Dennis Rader is the president of the local Christ Lutheran Church's council. I mean, that is literally how he got caught. Now, that's not enough evidence really to put someone down for these heinous crimes. Well, when the investigators drove by his house, ding, 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 black Jeep Cherokee. Okay, well, there's 2 marks. Because that's one they found, or the one that they saw on the surveillance footage of Home Depot. Mm-hmm. And then something else happened that was kind of interesting. The police obtained a warrant to test a pap smear taken from Rader's daughter at the Kansas State University Medical Clinic. Mm-hmm. And DNA tests showed a familiar match between the pap smear. Oh, you were right. And the sample from a victim's fingernails. I imagine that she was fighting back, and they scraped the DNA. So from the pap smear, the DNA was very close match to Rader's daughter. Yeah, like it would have had to have been one of it had to have been the daughter's, some family member. Yeah. So I mean, they put now 3 and 3 together. Yeah, like 3 strikes you're out. Let's go. And he was then arrested driving near his home in Park City shortly after noon on February 25th of 2005. So this would have been 9 days after he sent in that floppy disk. He's probably, the police were just like, let's fucking get this guy so we can just stop hearing from him. And this guy, right? The police officer asked Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown? All he replied is, oh, I have suspicions why. Hey, I can probably understand, but can you tell me why you think I did? Right. And then they did the whole entire, I mean, from there, the rest is history. They went in and searched his house. They got him. Yeah. I don't know. What's crazy to me, right, is if he didn't send in that floppy disk, would it be a Golden State Killer scenario where we find out maybe in 2019 who he was? Probably, unless like one of his kids did a crime and their DNA got put into the database, and then from there they can like, it's a cold case. Someone's like, I'll pick it up, and then just happen to find it, kind of like how the Golden State Killer kind of went. I would assume probably something like that if it wasn't for the floppy disk, but I don't know. He was just getting so arrogant at the end. I just feel like he probably would have sent an email at one point and they would have tracked it back to his computer, that eventually he would have gotten caught if it was a couple years later or what. Right. But, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, but the thing is, I know eventually he probably would have gotten caught because I think he's just so cocky. So arrogant. So arrogant, so cocky. But, yeah. He was then charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder, which he confessed to, and then from there he pled guilty instead of yeah, but on top of telling them everything he did, he still made no apologies. No, motherfucker, didn't give a fuck. Yeah. Then he was sentenced, I'm trying to think, he was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences with a minimum of each sentence 175 years. And so since Kansas also has no death penalty, he's obviously going to stay alive, which also is more beneficial because it costs the taxpayers millions to kill somebody than to house them for the rest of their life. So he is now just in jail for the rest of his life, which I think he's like about 45 minutes from where he lived. Yeah. But yeah. I do think that, I don't know, it's one of those, BTK is one of those ones that's just so interesting because he literally got his rocks off. I mean, besides all the other crazy stuff, but like, he wanted to be a Gacy. He wanted to be a Jack the Ripper, the son of Sam. He wanted to be one of those people. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to have his name out there.
maybe not as Dennis Rader, but that's why he gave himself the BTK killer name. He wanted the fame.
And it kind of pisses me off that he was successful in it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I get it, because with the police, they have to, what else are they going to do? Not do that? Like, not reply back to him? Because, like, they gotta know. They need to get the information. They need to catch the guy who's been fucking putting Wichita on the ropes.
No.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I definitely think that, I think he would have gotten caught eventually. And I think that his arrogance just wouldn't let him not just chill. Because, I mean, it sounds like from 1991 to 2004, he was just chilling. And what I mean by that is I'm sure he was still doing all of his sexual things with himself. And, you know, he had, like I said, he had people who put restraining orders out because he was stalking them.
Which is really interesting to me, because up until his arrest, he was still married, still with his wife. I wonder how the sex was with his wife, how that went for them, because, I mean, he was that intricate into BDSM. I wonder, obviously, about their sex life. But, I mean, then again, Gacy was basically a gay man who was, well, he was bi, but he was basically gay. Yeah. And he had 2 kids and a second wife that he was able to be with. But,
you know, and I don't know, like, especially in this time period, right? It's probably still still super fearful to have conversations with your partner in regards to your sexual desires, especially if you know that your fantasies are definitely more on the extreme side. Yeah. But I wonder what, like, if he would have talked to his wife and been like, "Hey, this is what I did. Like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but, like, this is the things." Like,
I don't think at the time, though, she'd be okay with it.
Probably not.
But my thing is, she was still with him until he got captured. But that means, like, in the 90s, he had restraining orders for stalking, and she stayed with him. If my significant other had a restraining order against them, and we were married for 30 years for stalking, we were been married for over 10 years, I'd be like, you gotta go.
Yeah, those are kind of the pieces of evidence that you can't find, because, like, I want to know how those conversations went, unless he just didn't tell her.
That is true, because if they served him when he was alone, she may never have even known. I mean, Gacy's mom and wife lived with him, and he was using his garage to do all the things with the little boys and hiding the bodies in the house. So, I mean, at the same time, love is blind. Yeah. But I just think that's also another scenario. That's also not our business, really. And also, it's not her fault. It's no one's fault but his own for what happened.
There is an interesting thing, though, and I don't know if it's fiction. So, BTK is kind of slightly introduced in that Netflix show Mindhunters.
Apparently, it's supposed to be season 3's main focus.
Yeah, so there's a scene, because you've seen both seasons, right?
No, I have to still watch it.
So they don't ever really talk about BTK, but at the start and sometimes at the end of episodes, they show him. Like the ADT shirt, like kind of like almost like a true crime. Well, it was almost like a true crime's Easter egg, because it didn't have any bearing to the story. But if you know about true crime, that's BTK. But there was a scene, if I remember right, where they showed him like tied up with noose around his neck, like on the ground, like on all fours in women's clothing, and then his wife walking in on him and seeing it.
So I wonder.
There might have been details that I missed, because I really didn't want to go down the path of talking about all the sexual things, because that's like that's type of stuff that maybe would be better down on a Patreon episode or something.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
You know, he definitely, you know, like I said earlier, I don't kink shame, but as far as what he wanted to get into, that would still be considered in today's day and age as fairly extreme. Yeah.
Well, to his extent, yeah, it's a bit extreme, but also it's very out there. And then also, too, you find your right community and your right partner, and you can have no issues.
Well, I would like to address everyone, just if you have these fantasies and you're married with someone, you got to talk to your fucking partner.
Yeah, because you never know. They might have the same ones.
Yeah, they might just be like, oh, yeah, I'll fucking hang you from the top rope, bud.
Hey, bud.
You know?
Hey, bud.
You know?
Hey, I know a couple, for their 8-year anniversary, they gave one of them gave the other golden shower. Mix it up.
Yeah. Gotta change things up.
You've been together for how long? You gotta try something new.
Yeah.
So you never know. Talk to your partners.
You gotta have a partner that's open to shit. You never know.
Yeah, but even then, at this time when he did get married, it's kind of hard because it's the 70s and
it's different.
It's different. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. I watched like a interview with his daughter and how it was really weird, and even her husband was like, "Yeah, it was really weird. He seemed like every other Wichita dad, just lame almost. This is just basic, silly, simple man."
So they did a psych eval on him to see if they could plead sanity, or is that what it is? Plead insanity.
Yeah.
For his case. And psychologist Robert Mendoza was hired for the public defense, and he determined that, or he conducted an interview with Rader, and Mendoza diagnosed Rader with narcissistic, antisocial, and obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. He also observed him that he was like this. He had this grandiose sense of self, and a belief that he was special. So he felt like he needed special treatment.
Yeah.
And a pathological need for attention and admiration. Obviously. So I want to ask you this, right? Because now we've done, I would arguably say, probably like 5 of the most infamous serial killers.
Yeah.
All of them are very similar in a lot of ways. But I'm trying to figure out, like, I want to try and get in the mind of one of these guys. Like, do they have split personalities? Because because we talked about this before, right? Like, if you, we'll use, like, in the mood for one thing, right? Like, sometimes if you're in a super hyper, like, sexual mood, like, your thoughts might be different when you're just, like, normal going to work, right?
Yeah.
So, like, do these guys have just that, but, like, times a million? So, like, when they get in these moods, it's so far out of their normal behavior that they just can't not be
that person.
Murderers.
Yeah, I would see that because, like, I mean, like people who are in the BDSM communities, when they're, like, doms or subs, most of the time you can't know that just by looking at a person.
Right.
Like, they have that different, like, persona in a different sense. Same with, like, furries. They have their own persona in a separate category which is, like, this person and this person. So I think, yeah, I can see that, definitely. And I think, too, like, in these cases, too, where they can have, like, normal sex personas and then their extreme sex personas. So I think so, yeah. I think, I don't know, like, the whole, if they're different personalities, like, if they're, like, a split person, like, if they have something like that, I don't know. I'm not really into, like, I don't know enough about psychology and enough about the disorders, because, like, I was watching this girl who has borderline personality disorder, and she, like, says that you can't really know when she's a different person, because she barely even knows if she's a different person. It just kind of feels like she's just so many things at once. And she was saying how, like, she was just, like, filming herself, and she was, like, sitting on the couch, kind of like this, and how she knew she was a different person as she sat up like this.
Right.
And it was just simple like that, and that's just how she knew she was kind of in a different mindset as someone else. So I think possibly, but I think this one goes far deeper because it's an obsession. It's like their niche, their desires, their what they're into, like their fandom, I guess you can even say too.
And I guess it does harken back to childhood, right? Like, if you get involved in something at a young age, you probably never will be, like, for example, like something that's not crazy that I was involved in at a young age is Pokemon cards. And I'm 26 years old and I still buy packs every couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so if you have a childhood where you're obsessed with, like, you know, murdering small animals, and at a young age you start getting interested in these sexual acts, like, I think that just becomes you. That it's ingrained so much that even if you want to avoid it, you can't. Or someone like Ed Kemper, who had to deal with so much, you know, bullying and harassment from his mom, that he could just never let it go. Yeah,
and I think, because that's the thing, too, with Ed Kemper, and he didn't stop until his mom was dead.
Right.
And once his mom was dead, he was like, I'm okay now.
Right.
I can't, well, he's like, I know I'm not safe for society because I'll keep doing it, but...
The end-all goal, well, whether it was a goal or not, the evil is gone in his eyes.
He was he was satisfied once his mom was dead. So I think so. I think partially like Rader, especially, or Dennis Rader, being super into bondage at such a young age, and it just kind of took over his life. I think. I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
I'm
trying to think of the words.
I kind of think that as far as sexual, like, what you have to do to get your rocks off can really be a slippery slope depending on when you get involved at certain ages. Because I don't know if you read any of these articles lately, but like our generation, at least men, are having a lot more ED problems because of porn being so regularly available that, you know, the just seeing a naked woman who wants you isn't enough anymore.
Yeah.
So they're actually not even getting aroused, thus, you know, causing ED. On top of the fact that, you know, they're slapping their meat like 6 times a fucking day. Like,
yeah. No, 100%. I think that's also too what's hard, because I know a lot about that, and that's why I think talking to your kids about porn is really important, because I was reading like a book, Men, Women, and Children. Really fantastic book, fantastic movie. But that was one of the kids' problem, is that he watched so much porn that just having normal sex, he couldn't come or even get hard, because he was just so desensitized and needed something more to get off. So I think with Dennis, because like, I mean, he did bind and kill and torture animals, that it kind of became his thing.
Yeah. And then when it turned into being of age to now start thinking about sex, how he can incorporate what he did with those animals into this now sexual fantasy.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where the slope was. Because, I mean, the whole porn thing and sexual desire, if you start at a young age and you start in like a pretty deep pool of, you know, fetish or whatever, like, you're not going to be able to
come back really.
You're not going to be able to maintain that for 20 years without getting even more extreme, because regardless if people want to admit it or not, there's a point in time where you get, I don't want to say bored, but you want to explore.
Yeah, no, I think you can say you get bored.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, some people are okay with vanilla sex the rest of their life, and some people are like, I can't anymore.
Right.
But, and I think that's true, too, and that's why I think it's important to find the right partner, so that way you can grow together sexually and physically and emotionally. But I think with Rader, it was really hard because he developed a lot faster as a kid, because even at like 8 or 9, he was kind of like getting into like the sexual fantasies and then all that stuff. And then when he was like a teenager, he was binding and torturing himself, and also spying into his neighbors' windows and stealing women's underwear and clothes.
I think also too, there's this weird thing. I've been trying to research on it and think about it for this podcast, and I haven't quite came up with a whole entire summary of my thoughts, but I think there's this thing that humans go through. You know how when people use the term like, man, that makes me feel alive, and like usually it's like something crazy like skydiving,
like gives you an adrenaline rush,
right? I think for a lot of these serial killers specifically, like, that's their only way they feel alive, is doing these things, and then the rest of their life is just so
mundane, or it's just what you do to get off your rocks next time.
And I think, like, not to do with this, but I think that's where like addiction to some things come into play. Like, you know, for me, I'm not addicted to gambling. I joke about gambling, but man, when I have like $100 on a bet and I'm sitting there, like, my heart's just pop, 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 pop.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like exciting. So like, I think for some people, if they get involved in something like this that makes them feel alive at such a young age, that just becomes almost an addiction. Like, they have to get it because it's such a high, like, you know, the heroin Chase the Dragon, that's such a high that they want to keep getting it. Now they have to keep doing it and making it more extreme to try and get back to that initial
high. Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. Because, I mean, when I was a kid, because that's why I know I have, like, a shopping problem a little bit. I know I do. And it's not, like, so bad that I'm, like, in thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of debt. Like, I'm not, like, a shopaholic to the point where I'm...
Shout out to Pumpkin Shirt.
Pumpkin Shirt, $6 at Target. That gave me an adrenaline rush. But, like, I get that instant gratification of buying something online, and then once I get it in the mail, I just get that instant gratification again. But then it's gone, and I want something new. So like I do get that because like as a kid, I didn't really have like a lot of things, but like we would go on shopping trips, and that was like that was like exciting. I could get something new, and it's like fun and something to do, and like shopping was like really interesting for me, and so. Not even for like name brand stuff. It was going to the Hello Kitty store and getting cool Hello Kitty pens, and I was just like, yes. And so like even now I'm like I see Star Wars pens and I'm like, yes, give me the Kylo Ren one.
Gotta get it. Yeah. Fucking thick Ren.
Thick boy, Swallow Ren.
Yeah, Swallow Ren. No, yeah, I think that maybe that has something to do with it. Like I said though, I don't know what the hell I'm really talking about. It's just now that we've researched, was this our 6th episode?
This is like our 7th or 8th episode.
7th or 8th episode?
We're pretty deep in there because we did Gacy,
Mary Bell,
Heaven's Gate, Golden State, Ed. Is this our 6th?
I think this is our 6th. Are we missing one in there? Hold on.
I think we're missing one. Wait, because we did... I know for sure it was Gacy, Mary Bell. I feel like we did another one. I should have all of them on there. They're not... The website is still...
Oh, you're good.
Not perfect. I'm keeping that picture though. Oh, Elizabeth Smart. That's who we're forgetting.
Oh yeah, Elizabeth.
So this
Smart.
is our 7th episode.
Right.
Woo! Happy 7th.
Party.
Party, party, party.
We've covered 7 now. Pretty,
Yeah.
extreme cases for the most part, and like you start seeing patterns.
You do see patterns, and I think, and a lot of them is the whole. Killing animals as a kid, getting that kind of like almost like I feel like too how you're raised also too your self-esteem as a kid is so important that if you feel I've noticed a lot of like all of them so far is the belittling of a parent really fucks up a child because I mean Gacy was belittled for maybe being gay, which he was, but he didn't want to admit it, and it made it worse for him because his dad was so anti. The Golden State, his dad beat him around, and then left him, and then created another family with their exact names. Basically, just fucked his kids. He just restarted his life.
He called IT, and they were like, "Yeah, you plug it, you unplug the modem, and then you plug it back in."
Yeah, they're like, "Here, new family. Let's name him after my first children."
It's so fucking hardcore.
Fucking harsh. I mean, Heaven's Gate people bullied as a kid, couldn't really do much. Went crazy, was already kind of crazy, and then they made a religion. Mary Bell, prostitute at like 6.
Oh yeah, Mary Bell, as far as a kid goes, there's not going to be someone that tops that childhood trauma.
No, that one was rough.
But shout out to her. Great recovery.
Great recovery, wherever she may be with her granddaughter and daughter.
I hope you're doing well.
Hope so too, because you know what? Good on her for everything else. But, and then like, I think just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, but I think also too, like the self-esteem, like, I mean, Dennis Rader's parents weren't super abusive. They were maybe not there because they were working to raise their family and support their family, but him having also too feeling like, having that insecurity of his sexual desires.
Well, on top of that, okay, this kind of makes sense now. So if he was actually, since a young age, had this psyche eval where he, was narcissistic, like if he had that at a young age, maybe his parents were just normal, but in his eyes, they didn't give him enough attention because he wanted all of it.
Yeah. And especially with 4 brothers, you have 4 little boys running around, and also being the oldest, especially during that time, the oldest was kind of the third parent. You were watching your brothers and sisters, just brothers in this scenario, but I think then he just kind of was left in a corner, quote unquote, but really, in fact, he was fine. I mean, his mom went to movies with him and hung out with him, and I think because I didn't really talk about his parents so much because I don't think they were kind of normal parents, but I think with that narcissistic behavior and attitude, I think even as a kid he always felt like he was special and deserved more. So I think that insecurity of his parents not really loving him can go, and I mean you can even look at like someone like Ted Bundy, who his grandparents who raised him, that he thought they were his parents, find out no, his sister was his mom, and having that neglect of, because also his grandparents were fucking old,
right,
and they were having to raise another fucking kid, so they were probably not into it as much. So I think it's just like that that insecurity. And I mean, and then again, not everybody that has neglectful parents is the same way. Like, I mean, I was only raised with one parent and I was fine. I never had my mom, like, who left. That never really affected me because I had just a strong other parents kind of thing. But then again, with like Ed Kemper, his mom I think was like borderline. I think her mom probably was like schizophrenic.
Yeah, because she had issues.
She had issues. Well, she had borderline personality disorder for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if she had more because she just thought Ed was a monster,
evil.
He thought she knew, and he thought he was evil from the beginning. And then when his dad left, that just made it worse because then he lost his only parent that was like okay and wanted to like hug him.
Right.
But that was gay, so no.
Yeah, absolutely not. So I have a kind of a fucked up question. I don't expect you to have an answer to this because this is just a random thought. So, like, in 2020, right, it's murder, you don't get away with murder often, right? Like, I know there's still active serial killers and all that, but, like, if we were, like, to go out and actually try and, like, murder people, like, the chances of you getting away with it are, like, slim to none now because of tech.
Yeah.
Do you think that because of that, knowing that you can't, like, do this anymore, do you think a lot of these people who might be around our age who had terrible childhoods are now churning to drugs and suicide, since drugs and suicide are such a high rate nowadays, that this is now the outlet? Now, I'm not saying that I guess this is a dumb comparison because obviously the majority of people weren't serial killers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
But we don't have many serial killers in our age group. But now we have so many people who deal with trauma that now are just go the route of drugs or
committing
suicide, which is tragic on both ends. Like, you know, I'm not saying that this is a
Well, because then the new factor is social media.
Yeah.
And that's what's killing our generation is social media.
Too.
If you watch The Social Dilemma, it really shows that a lot. It's a really good documentary on Netflix, but I think nowadays the reason why we don't have like serial killers, but I think it's also too, one, people are more informed on how to do it properly to not get caught. Because I think also too, we live in an area, because I don't really keep up with like world news, and also too in our state we don't have a lot of murders and things like that. And when we do, it's big news. Like, I mean, anytime someone gets murdered in our state, it's like everyone knows it.
Right.
Because it's so less common. But I think if you gotta go out of the state, there's a lot more murders. But I think people are getting caught easier because obviously technology, but I think, because I know where you're coming from. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I just don't know if I really agree.
I want to rephrase it because I don't think comparing them to. I guess what I want to ask is, do you think that now there's more outlets available, positive or negative, for people who have childhood trauma? So we aren't seeing more serial killers.
Yes, I do. And also, too, I think because whoever the Mindhunter guy is, because now we also know what to look for when it comes to small children for those tendencies in the future. So now we know what to look, the signs of a future serial killer is going to be, so we can get them now the psychology and like the therapy they need. Right. And we can monitor them. So I think it is now harder to, I guess, grow a serial killer because we know the signs. Like, I mean, if you see a kid that hurts an animal in a sadistic way, not an accidental, or they were like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but like in a sadistic, like, I just wanted to know what killing would be like, we would know and be able to like change that shit real quick. Yeah. And normally by then they're kind of like looked at, so people pay attention more to them, so it's kind of harder for them to get away with it because they are kind of under a microscope now. And they know. Right. Because, I mean, I think back then teachers didn't give a fuck what was going on with you. No. You're sad? Math homework. Yeah. You know, that kind of mentality, I feel like.
It was definitely like if you're a guy, I was like, hey, how would you grow up, you fucking little baby bitch?
Yeah, it was basically like that, I feel like, with like back in the day. So I think nowadays, too, and also, too, I think, that's why I'm kind of excited for, like, my kids' generation, because like-mindedness and like openness is such a more bigger thing, and like having all the different communities are so much bigger. So I think, because if I think now, if every serial killer that happened was born now, I think it would be completely different, because like Gacy with his dad, even if his dad was homophobic and called him all those things, he would still have the LGBT community to back him up. Like, I mean, there's
people to turn to.
He would have people to turn to, and same with Dahmer, and then like Bundy. I feel like these are all like ideas of like, if they were born now, how would it be different? Because I feel like if Bundy was born now, like with his mom situation, it wouldn't be a big deal that she was a teen mom, because there's so many teen moms, and she'd have that outlet to raise her son. Slash, if she did give it to her grandparents, the grandparents would be like, well, your mom's still growing up, that's why we're going to raise you until she's ready, or we're just going to have you and you guys can just pretend to be siblings. But it's not such a big deal nowadays for a teenager to get pregnant and have a kid. And I think too, if like Ed Kemper, like if what was happening to him, he would go to school and like someone tell a teacher, and then he would have been taken away from his mom at the beginning and given to his dad. Or if his dad left and his mom was doing that, she would get locked up, like being locked in a basement and thinking that he was literally in hell because of it. Would be different. Dennis Rader having the bondage things, I think he would be kind of like...
he would have loved FetLife.com. I mean, well, shouldn't shout them out. I'm not sponsored. But... He would
have that now outlet to be like, as if he was like 19 now, he would have that community to do all those things. Because I mean, they're all... You don't really hear about them because you're not part of them, but they're pretty prevalent, and you would be able to have like those outlets. So I think I agree with what you're saying too, and I think for us right now, like you said, you're excited for like your kids' generation. Yeah. Like for us right now, we're still like trying to round out the edges, because like we're still like depression and all that is like running rampant through. Oh yes.
And I do think social media is the cause, but I'm hoping that we're going to be able to round out the edges enough to get to a point where we realize social media isn't what we think it is. It isn't like watching like these famous people have the life we want, and like they're perfect and we're not. Like that needs to be eliminated. And there's movements for that. Like people are talking about that. So
well, and also too, like getting rid of the like button, or like Instagram getting rid of, if you don't want people to see how many followers you have or how many likes you have on a post, you can get rid of that. So you may have 1,000 likes, but you don't know how much that person actually has. They could have 2. So it's kind of like that mentality.
Because like for the last little while, we've been a society of like, not everybody, but a large portion of people who talk, who aren't, who are in like the modern age as far as like social media and stuff goes, like it is kind of, oh, you have how many likes on that? You're like, oh yeah, she has this many followers, she must be a person of interest. It's definitely like, and then that can definitely kill the morale of the ones who are like, she's so pretty, or he's so handsome, like how does he get so many likes, like and then they just fall into this sorrow of like, why thinking they can't get there. Well,
because like, I mean, I even dated a guy who, like, my book Instagram, it does pretty fairly well. I mean, I do well.
Yeah.
But that's because I have a niche. I'm part of a community.
Books, Coffee, Bees.
Books, Coffee, Bees. Boom, 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 boom. Shouts out myself. But it gives a community. But I dated a guy, and he had double my followers, but his post would get like 50 likes most, and my post would get 400 likes. And he was like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I put good content, first of all. Also, too, and that kind of...
Do you guys hear that?
Shame. Sorry, I get more nuts than you. But even then, I felt, like, really weird about it, because I was kind of like... Because it was like he was jealous of me.
No.
But it's also like... Instead of being like, wow, babe, your Instagram, you have less followers than me and you have more likes, that's so impressive. It was more of like why do you have more than me? And it was like a competition, and it's like and I almost felt like I even put myself down in a sense, and that's what like one thing I'm like, I'll never do that for another man ever again.
Right.
Because it was like, well, I was like, well, you have to think about it like this. Like I have a niche, and like people want to see my content because they like horror books and vinyls. Like I have people who are interested in what I want to put out, and that's why I get more likes and follows in a sense. Where because I'm putting out what people want to see.
High quality content versus low quality content.
Yeah, like no one gives a shit about your band. Sorry.
Boy, let me fucking tell you.
But like at the same time, like it's not that no one gives a fuck about your band. It's just like I'm also promoting myself in a different way. Like I'm nonchalantly posting. You're trying so hard, but it's like also too. It's not. It shouldn't be a competition in a sense of like when we were in a couple, like a relationship. It should be. I'm really proud of you. You're doing so good. Keep it up. Or, hey, how do you do that so I can do that?
That's the problem with social media is a lot of people look at it as a competition, when in reality it's not.
No. Like couple of my favorite horror people, they have like 10K plus. I only know because they have the K there in their name. But like, they still talk to me and hang out. Like they want to communicate and have a conversation. That's what they're looking for. And most of the time, like one girl was like asked how she got so many, and she's like, I don't know, I really don't. I'm here.
Well, I mean, we have to. I mean, the reality is like jealousy is still very prevalent in humans.
Yes.
Like, and we're not just talking about this scenario, but like just everywhere. I mean, you hear about that with like rap stars, movie stars, all that. Like they'll go back and like go with their old friends and their old homies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's always someone in there who's envious and jealous and tries to take them down.
Yeah.
And you see that on fucking like social media too, where it's like someone's doing good and then you got like that one person in the comments like, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
Just because they don't have what you have, or like
yeah,
they want
well, and that's the hard thing about the community I am in, the horror community, and that's why I feel like I'm not super active as much as I want to be, is because it has a lot of, and that's what like, which is so great. Some of the people I follow are like, they do like shouts out Saturdays, which is really great. But the thing is then, what they're doing is like promoting smaller accounts with under 10K, but they still get shit on because they're not promoting this person or this person. And it's always like, oh, well, I have the collector's edition of the Friday the 13th. Like everyone's talking about like the new collection that just came out. But it's like that mentality of like, oh, I can never do it because I don't have as much stuff as this person, or I'm not as big as this person. And I think that's where I feel like social media is really hard because people have that jealousy and like that insecurity. And I think that's what makes it really difficult.
And I really hope that with like the kids' generations, that goes away, because I don't know, it's really prevalent with people our age and older, where it's this like, they feel like because of the situation that they're in, that they deserve the spots that they see on social media. When in reality, like, I had this conversation last night with Morgan McKell, a guest of mine on a different podcast. It's basically like when you look at somebody and you see what they have, if you're not excited about their success, like there's something wrong. Like, and I think a lot of people too don't see the small steps, right? Like, we compare it to like someone who is like really big into fitness. Like, you know, we could say like an Instagram model, one way or the other, guy or a girl. Like what fitness people might see is like now this perfectly crafted body, you know, muscles on muscles or butt on butt, like whatever it is that like they're doing. Like you see that and now you're jealous or envious or whatever. But what you didn't see is like they're 38 years old and they've been doing it for 15, 16 years. You know, people don't see that, and now they just see this like the final product in this person's eyes, and they're like, oh, that should be me. And it's like, have you been grinding that long for it? Or you just want to pretend that you are?
And that's the thing too. I think that's hard about like the horror community, not like the collectors, I guess, even like not even horror collectors, just collectors in general, is that you may like even like Pop Funkos. You have 3 Pop Funkos. That's the start of your collection. Someone may have every single Pop Funko ever existed, but at least you have 3, so you're getting started. You're getting there. You may not have the collector's edition from Comic-Con, but you have 3 that bring you happiness and joy. And I think that's what the mindset that people forget about, is that every, like the collectors that I follow, they've been collecting since they're like 34, and they've been collecting since they were 18.
Yeah.
That's so many fucking years. Of course they have so much more stuff because they've been at it longer. Like with my vinyl collection, like I don't own that many vinyls, and sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I had that many vinyls. But at the same time, if I spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in the next 2 days, I can get there.
Right.
But it's like not smart, and you have to start somewhere.
And I used the comparison to like Twitch, right? Like one of the most popular and one of my personal favorite streamers is Tim the Tap Man.
Yeah.
He's becoming a household name. He's phenomenal at what he does.
Yeah.
But I still see people hating on him, like, for whatever reason. And now they're getting to know him because he's super popular and super, relevant in media because he's funny and whatever.
Yeah.
But they didn't see the 10 years of being on Twitch.
Yeah.
They didn't see the nights of having 10, 15, 20 viewers, having breakdowns, wanting to quit. Like, they didn't see that. Yeah. They're just now seeing the success, the happiness, he's got a family that he's happy with. He drives a fucking Hellcat and a Jeep, and he's living in Florida. He's living the best life he wants to live because he's fucking worked for it for like 15 years. And he gets hate. And I just don't understand people who hate on that. Like, when I see that, that motivates me because I'm like, I want to get there,
Yeah. It's that mentality of like, well, you just have to grind for it. And I think that's the hard thing about social media is that it shows the final product of the grind, and people forget you have to grind for that as well. And I think that's what makes it so hard. Because like, my Instagram did really good in over a year, but I'm not anywhere closest to where the people with 10K followers are, and I'm not getting like sponsors and dozens of messages a day. But in 5 years, I can get there if I keep grinding.
And I think we got to go back to what we talked about, the instant gratification, kind of like the shopping thing.
Yeah.
Social media is 100% that instant gratification, but also from the negative side of things, because we could scroll through Instagram and we're just seeing one post.
Yeah. And
immediately you could just have an emotion. For a large portion of, I hope it's the vocal minority, but it seems like a large portion of people see those things and immediately just like, jealousy, hatred, fuck them, they're not moving.
Yeah.
Like, how do you live your life like that? I'm calling you people out. I don't give a fuck if you want to talk shit on me. Like, how do you live your life so miserable and pissed off at other people?
Yeah, I don't know. And then that's just, I think, goes back to an insecurity thing. And like your mama might say, they're just jealous of you, sweetheart. They are. You know what I mean?
Are.
They're like, people give you hate because they wish they were you. Is a lot of the times what it is. I mean, that's why I feel like a lot of like people have so many like dispositions to things like that is because it is hard to get there. Haters just gonna hate.
Potatoes gonna potate.
Potato.
I know you had to get out of here right around this time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's next for us. And I personally will apologize. I had some stuff happen for the past couple of weeks, so we had to move around some shows. But going forward, every other week, there's going to be changes for the scenery coming November.
Yeah.
There'll be more talks and updates about that later, but the shows aren't stopping one way or the other. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
What are we planning on for the rest of this month?
I would say, so next week we have our Read Between the Lines. We're doing the Amityville Horror.
Right.
The book, we'll probably talk about the movie. We'll be all dressed up in our costumes. The Halloween episode for books Read Between the Lines. After that, I was wondering if you actually wanted to do People's Temple. It's the Jim Jones. The purple Kool-Aid cult. Do you want to do that one
I'm down to do that.
So then next week we'll have Read Between the Lines. Then we're going to have People's Temple, I believe it is. And that's the Jim Jones cult. And then after that, we're going to do, because normally with our schedule we do an every other week True Crime Drunks. But we'll do a Halloween special episode on the 31st. So actually on Halloween, we're going to do a Halloween episode. And me and Wes are just going to look up a bunch of different crimes that happened on Halloween.
Yes.
So they're all going to be a bunch of true crime related Halloween
I'm so excited for that.
Yes. Maybe we'll dress up for that too. I'm probably going to dress up. I think I might do my Freddy Krueger just because, fuck it, I might not. I don't know. We'll see. Well,
I mean, the Freddy Krueger is a for sure one because I can't remember when you did the Freddy Krueger the first time. There was just something funny that you did
with my hands. I just kept moving my hand. I would talk with my
yeah,
nails.
that's what it was. Yeah,
it was just the sass of it. But so yeah, next week we're gonna do another Halloween episode, but with our book club, Read Between the Lines. So next week we have that. Then we'll do People's Temple. Just a normal episode, and then we'll do our Halloween Spectacular True Crime Drunks, which we'll actually be drunk on.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll actually drink fully for that one, so it might get a little sloppy.
We'll get what the kids call schmacked.
We'll get schmacked, a little schmacked and spooky. I'm thinking about making maybe like a purple mixed drink, just in honor of the previous episode.
Can we get some dry ice and a cauldron to drink it out of?
Yes.
Just cause, like,
why not?
Fuck it.
Fuck it. But yeah, so that'll be till then, and then after that, we'll have to see kind of how things go, just because of getting the new setup.
Yeah,
and
so
all that stuff.
I'm having to leave the office we're in now. I have things lined up. There's about 3 or 4 things planned. I'll make sure to keep everyone updated when I get a set situation. Best case scenario, I'll have a spot all to myself that we can do a whole bunch of fun shit in. Yeah. Worst case scenario, we're on Zoom calls until we can figure something out.
Yeah, or we could do it at my house. I mean,
you're right. Yeah, I mean, there's
we'll figure something out, but it'll definitely be a change for the time being.
Change is sometimes great, so don't think of this as like
we're stopping the podcast. Yeah. We might take a small break, but nothing that's not kind of out of the norm. Yeah. So definitely stay tuned. The rest of the month is going to be spooktacular.
Yep, and just remember truecrimedrunks.com. Check out our website. Let us know what you want from it, what you want to see different. truecrimedrunks@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. That could be, if you want to help us research, if you want to give us tips, if you want to tell me I'm an idiot, whatever it is. If you want to talk about pumpkin shirts.
Pumpkin shirts, $6
hit up the email.
Target.
And if you're watching this on any other sites, hi,
give us a follow.
Yeah.
Follow me on Books Coffee Bees Instagram.
Coffee Bees.
If you like vinyls, movies, books. I have I can't pick one. It's a prefala of good stuff.
Things. All right, guys. Thank you again. Everyone have a good night.
See you later, skaters.
Later, skater.